Welcome to this video tutorial where we will be building a Movie Explorer website using React.js, Redux Toolkit, Redux Saga, and Material UI. You will learn how to use and simplify your Redux code and make it easier to manage your application state. Also, you will learn how to use Redux sagas to handle asynchronous actions and manage complex application logic. Also, you'll learn how to use Material UI to create a consistent and modern UI for your application. Apart from that, you'll learn how to use and create reusable and maintainable styles for your application using style components. Also, you'll learn how to use React Router, a popular routing library for React, to create a multi-page application with multiple routes. And that's not all. You'll learn how to use responsive design techniques and CSS media queries to optimize your application for mobile devices. And at the very end, we're gonna deploy our website, and you will have a live version of this website on the internet where you can share it and put it in your portfolio. But before we start, here are some prerequisites you should have. A basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, familiarity with React.js and its basic concept, text editor of your choice, and a good will to learn.
Code with Sloba.
Alright, so this is the application that we are going to be building, but before we start the actual coding, you need to go to this website, the movie database. So the URL is going to be in the description box below. So you need to go and create an account here, and once you created an account, you need to go and sign in. And here on the top right corner, you can go and open up your profile and go to the settings. Then on this left panel, under the settings, you have this API. And all you have to do for now is you need to go and copy your API key. So this is important because we're going to use this API key to make all the API requests. As you can see here, we have this example of the API requests, and we will be attaching the API key to every single request. And now we can close this website, and let's head over to our desktop. Here I will open Git bash here, and let's generate a new project using npx. So type in npx create react app, and name of our application is going to be Movie Explorer. This is going to basically install all the packages that we need and set the boilerplate code for our application. So let's wait for a couple of minutes. I will just get back once this is installed. And the installation has been completed. Now we can open the Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you're using, and let's open up this folder. So it's on desktop for me. Yes, I trust the authors because that's me. Now let's explore this project that we got generated for us. On the top here we have Node modules folder, which is basically a folder which contains all the packages that our application has, and it has been installed from the package.json file. Next to the Node modules we have this public folder, and inside of this folder are all the items that are public and available from the application itself. Next to our public folder we have this source folder, which is the actual core of our application. Our application has been rooted and bootstrapped inside of this index.js file, which is the main file of our application. Inside of this file, we are importing this app component, which is the only component at the moment which we have in our application. And this component is being rendered inside of this React strict mode tags, which basically says that this application is running in strict mode and stricter rules have been applied to our application while coding itself. Now let's examine this app.js component. As you can see, we're just importing the logo on top and some CSS code. And here basically we are adding some additional resources where we can learn React. So let's run our application and see what we have in the browser. In Visual Studio Code, you can open up the terminal by just dragging from the bottom of the editor on top. And here we can start our application by running npm start. It will run the React scripts and it will start a development server. And we can see we just have this edit source app.js file and save it to reload basically. And here we have a link to React.js documentation and this React logo that is spinning. So we will just remove all of this code and clean our application component. So we'll first remove this logo file import, and I will also remove that file because we don't need that. Also, I will clean up this app CSS file, which is here. We don't need that as well. And we can remove the file itself. And here I will just remove all of this code because we don't need it again. And just return empty strings. And don't forget to remove this import because this file doesn't exist anymore. And now we can proceed on installing the packages that we need for our application. What I would like to do is to open up the terminal and install all the packages that we need throughout our application so that we don't have to deal with the packages anymore later. And we just can focus. For faster development and for styling our application, we're going to use Material UI library. So let's head over to their website. So this is MUI website, and here we have a shortcut. Basically, we can just copy paste this installation command. So npm install MUI material emotion react emotion/styled and hit enter. And now when React material has been installed, let's clear the console. Next, for state management of our application, we're going to use Redux Toolkit. So let's install those packages. Run npm install at redux.js/toolkit and React Redux. Hit enter. And that is completed. Let's clear the console. Next, for managing side effects in our application, we're going to use Redux Saga. So let's install npm install redux-saga. And let's clear the console. And on our index page, let me show you. On our index page or this popular movies page, basically we're going to have an infinite scroll. So what it means is once we hit the bottom, we want new movies to appear. In order to achieve this and implement this feature, we're going to need additional package which is called npm install react infinite-scroll-component and hit enter. Okay, that's done. Let's clear the console. And because we're going to have a couple of pages on our application, so as you can see, we have this single page of the movie where we have additional description, and we have this index page, we will need a router. So let's install npm install react router -dom, like so. And finally, we're done with installing all the packages. We can close this bash. And before proceeding with this tutorial, please open up the package.json file and make sure that all the package versions are exactly like this. If you don't do that, there's a high probability and high chance that you may run into roadblocks and conflict issues while development. So please make sure again that the package versions in these files are exactly the same in yours. That's sweet. Now let's close both of these files. And I want to create a new folder inside of the source folder. So here in the source folder, just open up new folder and name this folder containers. This folder is going to contain two components. Obviously, they're going to be container components. We're going to have popular movies and movie details. Popular movie component is going to be displayed on our index page. Basically, this is our index page. So these are like popular movies. And the second container is going to be movie details here, where we get more detailed information about our movies. So let's create those two components. So click on create new file and name this file as popular movies with a camel case.js. And again, create new file, and the name of this file is going to be movie details.js. Now let's create these two files, and the first thing that I want to do is to create two routes for both of these pages. So I'm just going to create two dummy components for now. So in the popular movies component on the top, let's import React from React, and let's declare functional component named popular movies. And this component is just going to return hello from popular movies. This is like a placeholder. And at the bottom, just export default popular movies, like so. And now we can create exactly the same component here in the movie details component. paste this code and let's just update the name of our component. So this one is going to be named movie details, and copy and paste it on the bottom here. And now that we are done with creating these two components, we can go to app.js file and import these two components here and create route for them. Okay, let's first import the packages that we need in order to implement the routing. So in the import section, import browser router, then we will need route and routes. Okay, and now in the return statement here, let's open up the browser router. This component basically allows the client-side routing. Inside of that component, we will place routes. This component is used to define what routes are going to be available inside of our application. And to define routes, we are using route component, obviously. So type in route. The route component takes two arguments. The first one is the path of the actual route. So the first one is going to be just slash for a home page or index component. And the second property is the element property. Inside of this property, we are defining what component should be rendered inside of this route. And for our index page, that is going to be the popular movies. So first we need to import this component, popular movies from containers / popular movies. Okay, and just render it inside of the element property, popular movies, like so. And now let's save this and open our browser to see what we get on our slash or index route. And here we get, let me just zoom in, we get hello from popular movies. So this is the text from our popular movies component. And now let's do the same for our movie details component. So here in the import section, let's import movie details component from containers / movie details. And now we can use this code that we already written. Let's copy it and paste it. And just let's change this path, and the element is movie details and the path is /movie / ID. And you probably notice here that we have colon in front of this route. So what it indicates is basically that we have a dynamic part of the route itself. This movie is static portion of the route and this ID is dynamic. Let me show you an example. So if we go to the finished version of our website, we can see that if we open up our index page, and let me just show this for you, you can see that this is the index URL. But if we click on a movie, we get this route movie and the number of the movie itself. Using this number, we're identifying this movie in a database and fetching the information for it. But if we go and click on a different movie, you can see that the number is not the same. So it means that this portion of the URL is dynamic. Now let's get back to our editor and let's save and test our routes. Okay, let's open up our browser and let me shrink it down so you can see the URL as well. As you can see, we already tested this home index page. But if we go /movie / some random number, we should get hello from details, but we are getting hello from popular movies, and the reason for that is because we haven't updated our movie details component to say hello from movie details, like so. Let's try it again, and now you can see hello from movie details. And if we change the path to / we get hello from popular movies. And with this, we are complete with setting up the routes for our application. Okay, now we can close these two files, and I want to create new folder, and this folder is going to be called components. And obviously the purpose of this folder is to hold all the components that we are going to create in our application. The first component I want to create is layout component, and this component is going to hold all the styles that we're going to share across the pages in our application. Also, in this component, we are going to store the shared components that we use on two different places. So on the index page, we have this logo on the top, and we have this input search. And if we go to the movie details, you can see that we also have this search input as well and this logo on the top. So we are sharing these two components on both of these pages, and we're going to place them in the layout. So let's do that. So inside of the source and the components folder, add a new file and name this file as layout.js. In the import section, let's import React from React, and let's create a new functional component named it layout. And what we want to do is we want to just return empty statement for now, and let's export default on the bottom. In order to create a theme and to use the styles from Material UI, we need to import theme provider first. The theme provider is a component from React Material UI, and basically this component enables us to use a theme object throughout the application itself. So let's import theme provider from @mui/ material/styles, like so. And also, apart from that, we will need create theme. Using this method, we will create a new dark theme for our application. And how we do that, it's very easy. So below here, let's create a new constant and let's call it dark theme, and we will use create theme method. And inside of this method, we basically pass in an object. For the object, we have this palette property, and for this palette property, we need to define the mode. And for us, the mode is going to be dark, because I just love dark themes. And now, inside of our return statement, let's open up the theme provider. And we now pass this dark theme as an argument, or actually as a property. So here, open up the theme and pass in this dark theme as a property. This basically means that all the child components of this theme provider are going to have the dark theme codes and styles applied to it. And now, in order to apply some additional styles to our document, we need to import additional component from React Material UI. The name of this component is CSS baseline from Material UI. And now we just place it inside of the theme provider, like this. To test this, let's try our layout component. So here, let's import the children. And basically, we're going to use this component as a wrapper for our content. So add a children here. What it means is basically we're just going to surround the other components with the layout component, and whatever content they have, it's going to be rendered inside of the children here. So let's wrap our entire application with it. Let's save the file and open app.js file. First, let's import our component. Import layout from components layout. And now let's wrap our routes component with the layout. Just move it inside. And this basically means that these two components and all the elements inside of them will have this layout default styles applied to them, like a background color and the color of the text, margins and paddings. So let's try it. So if we go to our browser, we can see that the background color of our application has been changed to this dark one, and the color has been changed to the white. Awesome. Okay, the next thing which I want to add to this layout component is, if we check our final version, I want to add this logo link on the top and this input search. So this is going to be placed inside of the layout, so that is presented in both of these components and on both of these pages. So let's do that. So open the layout.js file and let's import the link from the top. So import link from React Router DOM, and let's open here a new div. Like so. And inside of this div, let's open this link element. This link element will serve as a back button to the home page. So let me head over to the final version, and if we open a movie details page, here as you can see, if we click on this link on the top, basically it head over to the index page. So that's what we want to do. So this link component has one property, and that's to. So, and here we provide the URL. So it's only the / because we want to only to route to the index page. And inside of this link, we want to place an image of our logo. So set image and set the attribute to the movie database. And now let's import the image itself. The easiest way is to download from the compiled version or the final uploaded version. So save image as, and let's add a name of logo. I will provide the URL of this final version so that you can go as well and download this URL if you want to have exactly the same version as I am. Okay, and now let's open the desktop to find this image that I just downloaded. So it's here, just cut it, and let's open this source folder in the file explorer, and let's just paste the image here. Obviously, if you have multiple images, you want to create a folder for it. But yeah, we are not using this one, so this one could be deleted. But if you have multiple images, you should create a folder for it. We only have one image in our entire application, so this will serve the purpose. Now let's import this image. So here on the top, import logo, let's call it like this, logo img from logo.png, like so. And now we can include it in the source property or attribute src logo img. Let's save this file and let's preview it. If you open our browser, we can see that the movie logo has been applied here and imported, but the problem is that we have this too big, so we have a scroll bar on the right, so we need to reduce the size of it and apply some styles. So let's do that next. In order to apply some custom styles to your elements or your components, you need to use styled from the material UI. So basically this is a styled components pattern. So let's start by importing styled. On the top, import styled from MUI/system. So this style function is used to create new components with the styles applied to them. So for example, let's style this image first. So here below the dark theme, we can create new style component using the const, and the name of this component will be the first letter is uppercase, and we will use style, and the first argument of this style function is the name of the HTML element that you want to create. So in this case, it's image, img. The next argument that you want to provide is the object with the styles defined for this element. So for the image, I want to set the margin left to be auto because we want to center our image. So set the same for the right, margin right. Set the display to block so that we can apply some width styles. Set the width to 500 pixels, and if the width of the container is less than that, we want to set it to 100%. So set the max width to 100%. And now we can use this as a new component. So just copy the image and replace the old HTML tag. And so what we have done here is we created a new component that inherits all the attributes of the previous component that it uses, and it adds these styles to it. So that's how we use style components with Material UI. Now let's go and preview in the browser. And as you can see, the styles have been applied. The image is centered now, and we have the width of the 500 pixels. If we reduce it, if we try to shrink it down, the width of the image is being, applied as well. So let's continue. I want to add some additional styles to our layout. Let's get back over to our layout file, and let's add some styles to this div. So again, we need to create additional style component. So let's name this one layout wrapper. like so. Again, we're using styled, and again, for the first argument, let's name the HTML attribute, or the element rather, and for the second one, let's provide the object. First, I want to add some space around this layout, so add a margin of 24 pixels, set the width to be auto, and now the next set of rules that I want to apply will be only applied on the larger screens. So if we head over to our content here in our application, you can see that this text is on the left side, but I want it to be centered because this is on the larger screen. So how we can do that is we can apply these rules only if a certain condition has been applied. So first we need to access the theme provider. So how we do that is we wrap this by parentheses, and here we get access to the properties of our theme. So we just need to destructure the object like so here. And now inside of our styles we can access the theme and all the properties that our dark theme has. In this case, I want to access the breakpoints of the larger screens. So how we do that is open the square brackets and use the theme.breakpoints.up. This means that we're going to target this resolution and up. And just put in LG, which means for large screens. And then you provide the values. So only if this condition has been valid, these rules are going to be applied. So on large screens, we want to set the margin left to be auto because we want to center our content. Margin right exactly the same, auto. And we want to set the width. Again, we're going to use the theme here. So theme.breakpoints.values.lg. So we're going to use this value from the theme to set the width of our basically of our layout. Let's save this and let's use our new style component. Just copy it and we can replace this div here. Let's save and let's preview. And as you can see, we have applied some margin around our logo here, and we also centered the layout. The text is on the left side actually because the text alignment is left. Yeah, so let's continue. The next thing that I want to create is this search menu here. So let's create a new component for it. So open up the containers folder and create a new file here. Name this file search movies suggestion.js. So let's close the other files. Let's create just simple functional component. Import React from React. Name of our functional component is search movies suggestion. It's just a regular functional component. And let's export default on the bottom like so. And this component will serve as a container component for our suggestion component. So let's create that component here and import it inside of our container. So create a new file here and name this file as suggestion.js. Let's copy the code from this file so we don't have to type it, and just name suggestion here. And for the export and in the return statement, just add the suggestion. This is just a placeholder basically, and let's import it here. Import suggestion from component suggestion like so, and let's just put it in the return statement. Let's save it and let's preview it. But actually, before we preview it, we need to import this one into the layout component here. And next to the link, let's add the search movie suggestion, and let's make sure to import it on the top. So import search movie suggestion from containers search movie suggestion. Let's save it and let's preview it. Okay, open up the file and here you go. Okay, so the first element that we need here in this suggestion component is the actual input where we can type in and search for the movies. So let's add that input. So here in the suggestion.js file, here in the import section, let's import text field from MUI/material. Okay, let's remove this text. Let's add the React fragment. And let's add this text field. And as you can see, this component is a self-closing component, but it requires some additional properties to be passed to. So let's add ID, and ID should be search. Let's add a placeholder as well, search. Set the full width to be true. Next, we can also add some individual styles to the components itself, so without creating the style components. So how we can do that is using SX property, and here we just provide a shortcut for the styles. So MB stands for margin bottom, and we can add 5. This will add 40 pixels of the margin on the bottom. So let's save this and preview. Okay, and as you can see, we added some margin on the bottom and we included this input, but this input needs to have different variants. So this is like a default look that we have on the text input, and as you can see here, we only have this border on the bottom of the input field, so we want to achieve that effect. So let's add additional property, and that one is variant. It should be standard. Let's save it, and there you go. This is the effect we want to achieve. And now the next thing which is left to be done is to implement the actual actions. Once you start clicking, like searching for a movie, we want to fetch the API, the movie database for this movie. And like mentioned in the introduction of this tutorial, we're going to use Redux for handling the state management of our application and Redux Sagas for handling the side effects. So let's go and create a store so that we can start off with that. Create a new folder inside of the source folder and name it as Redux. Here we're going to store all the files that are necessary for the Redux store. So let's create a new file, and this file is going to be store.js. Okay, and the store is the core of Redux store management, state management actually. You can think of a store as a jar full of JavaScript variables and objects. So it's essentially it's a one place where you can access your variables and objects, and a single place where you can fetch all the things that you manage inside your application. So it's a single source of truth. So you're updating these variables using the actions, and you're reading these variables as well from the same place. And we are using the Redux.js toolkit to configure our store because this is the easiest way to use the Redux pattern. So let's first import from the top configure store here from Redux.js /toolkit. So using this function, we can create a new store. So add a const store and use this function configure store. This function receives an object, and you can see from the IntelliSense, the first thing that we want to add are reducers. And we will talk about that in a bit. And we want to export our store, like so. As I mentioned in the explanation, you should think of a store as a jar. To be able to access all the variables from this jar, we need to wrap our application with this store. So we can do that in the index.js file. So first we need to import the provider from React Redux. Import provider from React Redux. And now let's wrap our app component with it. So write provider and move the app inside of it. For this application, we can even remove the React strict mode because this is not the purpose of this application. And now for the provider, we need to provide one parameter, which is the store. So this store that we just created. So let's import the store from that file. So import store store from Redux store and just place it. And essentially, this is the only setup that we need to do on top of our application. And with this, we have provided our application with all the variables and all the objects from the store itself. So every single component can access them using the hooks that I'm going to show you later. And now let's go create our actions and reducers. So inside of the Redux, let's create a new file. And this file, name it search.js. So this file will handle all the actions and the reducers that we apply for our searching functions. And just to give a quick overview on how Redux works. So basically, from the UI, we are triggering an event from the input, and this event gets dispatched to an action. And that action gets caught in the reducer, and then reducer performs an action. So depending on what we want to do with our reducer, in this case, we would want to fetch for an API request, get the data of the movie, and get it returned back. So this is something that we would do in the reducer. And then we would read that state from our store. Reducer also stores this return data into the store itself. And then we access that data using useSelector hook. But we will talk about that in a bit. So let's continue creating our slice. First, we need to import our createSlice method from redux.js/toolkit. This is the function that we use to create our slices. So define a constant, and the name of our slice is search slice, and we're going to use the createSlice function that we imported. This function receives an object, and the first property of this object is name. So name is going to be search slice. We need to define the name because we're going to have multiple slices in our application. The second argument is initial state of this slice. So here we need to define an object, but we can do that inside of the variable on top here so that we can use this on multiple places. For example, when we want to reset our state, we can use this initial state object. So create a new variable named initial state, and it's going to be an object. Inside of this object, we're going to have results, and this is going to be an empty array initially. At the end, this is going to be an array of movies when we fetch something. Then we have total results. This is 0. So this is the total amount of the records that we receive in the movies. And we have the page number. We have the total pages, which is 0 as well. And we have is fetching. This flag is going to indicate whether we are fetching or not. So if the fetching is in process, it's going to be set to true. And now let's pass this variable here to our property. We can do this like this, or a short syntax, just omit like this. So this is the same, but shorter and better. The next property is reducers. These three properties are the required properties that we're going to define in all of our slices. In the reducer, when we define a reducer, we are defining action at the same time. So this is the beauty of the React toolkit. So the first reducer that we're going to define is search movies. And this reducer is going to receive the state. All the reducers actually receive the state. So this is the initial state that we have and the current state at the time of that action. All we want to do in this action is to update this is fetching flag to true. So let's return, and we are destructuring the state that we received. So the state, all the other files or rather properties are going to remain the same. We are only going to update the is fetching. Is fetching we will set to true, like so. Next, we're going to define fetched search movies. And this action is going to be triggered when we retrieve the movies back. So as a parameter, we get the state, so the current state of our application, and we get the action back. Using this action, we can access the payload or the actual result of the movies. So what we want to do, again, we want to return the state, and destructure all the properties of our state here. And then we want to update these other files or properties actually. Now as fetching is done, so we need to set this to false. As we are done with the fetching the results, then we need to update the results, and we will access the action.payload and results here. So basically this is the payload that we're going to return back from the Sagas or the actual API request. We will set that later. The next property that we want to set is total results, and we receive that from action.payload, and the name of the property is total_results. Okay, next one is page, so action.payload.page. the next one is total pages, and we access that from action.payload.total_pages. The pages basically represent at what portion of the data you're fetching, because this movie database has thousands and thousands of movies, and when you search for something, it shows you and return back just like a certain page. If it's like 0 page, it returns first 10 movies of it. So, and here it says this many pages we have. And so to sum up, basically, first we trigger this search movie, which triggers the fetch API request. And once that fetch API request is done, then we trigger this fetch search movies. And then we return back this action.payload with the actual results and store that into our state. There's one more reducer that we want to create, and the name of this reducer is reset state. So this one is basically in charge for resetting the state back to its initial state. So we'll just return this initial state that we defined on top. So just type in return initial state, and that's it. And with that, we created our search slice object, which basically holds our reducers and our actions. So let's export them so that we can import them inside of our store here. So on the bottom of the file, export const, and we are destructuring this object. So this search slice dot actions, and this is how we access the actions that we defined here using the actions property. And here we extract the actions. So we have search movies, we have fetched search movies, and we have reset state, like so. And we want to export our reducers, or actually one reducer, which is the search slice reducer. So export default search slice, and we access the reducer here in the property of this object, reducers. Now we can use these actions in different files in our application to trigger these actions. And we can use this reducer here in our store.js file. So let's import it. Import search from search reducer from search, and inside of the reducer, let's give it a name of search and just include this reducer. Let's save it. Now let's try this action that we just created. So let's go to the suggestions.js file here. And first we need to import use dispatch hook from React Redux. Okay, and now let's call this use dispatch hook. So use dispatch hook. And using this use dispatch hook, we get access to the function that we can call however you want. So let's call it dispatch. And using this function, we can trigger the actions, which then trigger the actions in the Redux store, and they update the state of the application at the end. So when we want to trigger an action, in this component, we want to trigger an action when the input changes. So let's define that with input on change, and receive an event. And we want first to check if it's not event.target.value. So basically, if there is no value in the target element, which is our input, then we want to return. So do nothing. Otherwise, we want to dispatch an action. So dispatch, and we want to dispatch search movies. But first we need to import the search movies. So import search movies from Redux/search. And now we can use this action to dispatch search movies, and we want to dispatch the event payload. So the payload is event.target.value. So this is the value of our input. Okay. Now we need to attach this input onChange callback function to our text field. So we provide that in the input props here. So open an object, and the method is onChange. onChange. And then we provide this callback function here. Now, how we can test this, that we are actually doing something. As you can see, we are calling this this search movies action, and this action, all it does is updating this isFetching to true. So we can try and log this isFetching because nothing else is calling this fetch search movies action. So we can just try and see if we have connected this entirely and correctly. So let's do that. We can do that inside of the suggestions container.searchMovieSuggestions, and this container is going to be used for selecting the state from the store. So how do we select state from the store? That's very easy. So again, we have another hook, and name of this hook is useSelector, like so. And now inside of our component, let's call this hook, so useSelector, and here we get access to our store. So call it store, and then we get back to our store, and we can destructure our store because we can return and access our slice or our reducer, and the name of our reducer is search. So if we go back to the store, this is how we name our reducer. So using this name, we can access our reducer here, search. And here we are destructuring that object, and the only thing which we can do is actually log it. So console.log search.is, and the name of the property that we created is isFetching. Okay, isFetching. Let's save it and let's try it. And let's open up our browser once again, but as you can see, our application has been crashed down. So if we inspect the console, let's see what it says. Store does not have a valid reducer. So probably we have a typo somewhere. So if we check the reducer, you can see that we here have this S, so it needs to be reducer. Let's save it, and now it works. So as you can see, first we log false, isFetching is equal false, and then if we type something like Titanic, for example, it fetches true. So this state management works for now. Now that we make our reducer to work and this search movies is working correctly, let's just clean up these suggestions, search movie suggestions. So remove this log, and actually the search one as well. And what we want to do now is we want to be able to fetch these movies. So we need to create a Saga that is going to watch for this action, for this search movie action, and then to perform this fetch search movies action and return back this action.payload. So let's do that. So inside of this source folder, let's create a new folder and name it Sagas. Create a new file and name this file as index.js. This file will hold all the Sagas that we have for our application, because we don't have a large application, but you would have multiple files for your Sagas. First, let's import a couple of facts that we will need from Redux Saga. So import on the top, delay, then we will need all, then call, then put, take every, take latest, from Redux-Saga /fx, like so. So these are all the effects that we are going to use in our Saga. Now let's define the first function that will handle our API call for the search movies. So create a generator function, and you know that this function is a generator when it has this symbol here. So star basically. So name of this function is fetch search movies. And this method receives a query, and we will call this query as action here. Next, using the yield keyword, we want to call delay function. This function is used to prevent too many requests. So when you're typing something very fast, you don't want to make requests every single second, right? Or even faster than a second. So this causes a delay, right? The next thing that we want to do is we want to dispatch an action. So we do that using, again, yield keyword, and we need the put method from Redux Saga effects. And inside of this put method, we call basically our action, and the name of the action is fetch search movies. So we need to import that fetch search movies, and we can call this action. So let's call this action, and inside of this action, then using the yield keyword again, we need to call the call effect from the Redux Saga, and this function is basically in charge for making the call requests. So it receives two arguments. The first one is the actual API request or the URL, and the second one is the payload. But I want to store all the methods for fetching the APIs into a single JavaScript class. So let's create a new file where we will store all these methods and we will call them from a single place. So let's do that. Create a new folder inside of this source folder here. Name this as a lib for library. Create a new file and name this file as api.js, like so. Here we're gonna create a new class, or actually the first class, export default class, and the name of this class is the movie DB API. Here let's define the first property, and the name of this property is API base URL. This is the URL of our API, and it goes https ://api.themoviedb.org version 3, like so. The second property is API key, and this is the key that you hopefully saved in your file, and we're gonna store that in a configuration file in a bit. Now let's create a constructor. So this constructor, when we're defining or creating new class instance, we're gonna pass in this API key that we're gonna store in a configuration file, and we're just gonna initialize this property here. So this API key is equal to API key that is passed to the constructor of this class. So let's define the method for searching the movies. Name of this method is going to be search movies, like so, and this is going to be async method. It's going to receive the query. Okay, and inside of the function, we're going to receive the response from the API, and we're going to store that into a constant here. Since we're using async, we're going to use await to wait for the response back, and we're going to use the fetch function to get the results back. Okay, and first we need to enter the URL here. I'm going to use the string interpolation of JavaScript to access the variables that we have in this class. So first we want to place the base URL of our API. Then the URL that we're going to look for is search/movie, and then we need to provide the API key. So API_key, and then we access this key with this.API key. And we want to add the query on the end. So basically, if somebody is looking for, like, let's say Titanic, it will say Titanic. So query equals to query, like so. And when we get the return back, what we want to do is we want to return this response as a JSON object notation. So basically as a JavaScript object notation. So call the response.json method on it. So now this response has been converted to JavaScript object notation. Along with the search movies, there is one additional API request that we need to make in order to create the suggestions in our search input. So let me just show you quickly. So if I open up the final version, and if I open up the network tab here, let me try to search something and to show you what is the response that we're getting back. So for example, let's we are looking for Titanic, and in the API request here in the results, if you can see that genre IDs is something that we're returning back. But what we want to return, this doesn't mean anything to the user. But as you can see, if we type to Titanic, we get these genres, so in human readable format. So we need to search the genres separately and then to use that response back to map the results to something that is visible to the user. So let's do that. We can use the code that we've written before because it's going to be very similar. We're going to update the method name to get genres, and we're not going to return any query because we're just getting the categories of the genres. We're going to update the URL. Instead of the search, we type genre, and we don't need the query because we are not searching anything. We're just returning back all the categories of the genres again. And that's it. Now let's create a configuration file for our API key where we can store our API key. So inside of the source folder, create a new file and name this file as config.js. And let's export new constant there, export const API underscore key. And here you will go to the website and hopefully you have created an account there. Open your profile and go to the settings. On the left side, you have this API tab, and here you have API key for the version 3. You can copy that and store inside of your configuration file here. Now save it and close it, and then inside of your Saga, let's import this key that we just created. So import API underscore key from config file here. And let's import the JavaScript class that we created as well. Import the movie database API here. And now let's create a new instance of this class. So create const API is equal to new the movie API database API and pass in the API key to the constructor like so. And now we can use this API class that we created to access the URL or actually the methods. So access the search movies method, and we want to pass the second argument is the action.payload. So this is the actual query that we are sending from the input, action.payload like so. And now we have created this generated fetch search movies function, but in order to trigger this function, we need to trigger one action before actually. So if we go to the search, so first we need to trigger this search movies, and then these search movies should trigger this fetch search movies. So we actually need to define a watcher saga, which is basically a function that watches for an action, for a certain action, and then it triggers a different action. So let's do that. So write export default function, and this is a generator function as well. And the name of this one is watcher saga. This is like a default saga. And again, inside of this generator function, we're using the yield keyword to call all method. Inside of this method, we're gonna provide all the actions that we're gonna watch for, and then we're gonna call other generator functions. So again, take the yield keyword and call the take latest. So we want to take only the latest action on the search movies. And the first argument is the actual action that we are looking for. So the first action is search movies, but this take latest accepts the string as an argument. So we access the string by using the type attribute. So search movies is the action, and the type is basically the string representation of this action. Once that action has been captured, we want to execute this fetch search movies function, generator function. And with that, we have been completed our watcher saga. And now we can include it inside of our store. So let me close all the files so that we are not being confused. And here, let's import our watcher saga. Import watcher saga from the sagas. Now we need to import one function, and the name of this function is import create Saga middleware. This function helps us to create new instance of the middleware for our store. So we do that easily by storing this in a constant. So name this constant as Saga middleware, like so, and let's just execute this method. So once again, we just created new instance of the Redux middleware. Now we need to store that inside of our store. So we have additional property inside of our store, and the name of this property is middleware. And here we get access to default middleware, like so. And here basically we're just executing this method. So get default middleware, and we want to set up the Redux thunk to be false, because by default it's enabled in Redux, but we want to use our Saga that we just created. So prepend Saga middleware that we created here on top. And then close that at the end. And what we want to do here, we need to execute the watcher so that always watches to the actions. So how we do that is we call our Saga middleware and we execute the run function or the method, and we just pass in our watcher Saga that we created here, like so. And this now watches for all the actions that are happening inside of this store, and if there is a match with the action, like the action type, it executes the generator function. So let's try that. And let's open our browser and let's try to type something like Titanic, for example. But actually we have an error. Let's see what is happening here. It says fetch is not a function. Okay, so you probably have a typo somewhere. So let's open the API. Fetch is not. Oh, okay. We have this parentheses. So it needs to be, this argument needs to be inside of the method. So I just opened the function, but I never passed in an argument, like so. So let's save this. Let's close it and let's reload the application. Let's try again, clear the console. So type in Titanic, for example, and if we check the network tab, we get this API request, and you can see it says query equals Titanic. And if we open up the query to preview, we got the actual results. So this is the page 1, and these are all the suggestions that we get for the Titanic. That's sweet. Okay, let's close that. And now we want to use this data that we got from the API, and we want to build something like this. So as you can see, we have this like autocomplete where we got all the suggestions for the movies that we are looking for. So in order to do that, we need to install one external package that creates this component for us. So let's open up a terminal. I know I said that we're not going to install any packages, but yeah, I forgot about this one. So let's write npm install, and the name of this package is downshift, and let's install the specific version, which is 7.2.1. So this way, you know there is any compatibility issues. Press enter. And sweet, we can install that. So let's remove this bash and let's close. Okay, this terminal. And now let's include it inside of our component, which is this suggestion component. Let's import the component in the import section. So import downshift from downshift. And let's place this component in our return statement. And we can replace these React fragments. Instead of them, just place the downshift. Like so. How we use this component is basically inside of this component we have access to a callback function, and inside of this callback function we can access certain fields which we can use to toggle the state of the dropdown. So the states are, or actually the inputs are get input props. So these are the properties that we're going to pass to the elements that we have under our autocomplete, let's say, component. So get item props. Then we have get menu props, and all these properties we're going to pass to the elements that we're going to create in a bit. Now we have the flag is open. So with this flag we basically are checking if the dropdown is open or not. Input value, then we have highlighted index, and we have selected item. selected item, like so. And this callback function returns back a JSX code. So let's place this text field inside of this downshift callback function, like so. And how we connect this downshift with our input element or the text field is by using this get input properties. We'll just copy these properties and we'll put them inside of these input props. So here we just would destructure the input properties, and then you would include this onChange method, which we already defined. So we will do the same for these item props and this menu props. So this way we will get menu opened, and also we will get like events on the actual items, like the hover over and the indexing. For the actual drop-down element, we're going to use the paper component from the material UI. So let's import it. Import paper from, let me see, from its material UI core. Okay. Or MUI/material, like so. And we can actually use this one next to the text field so that we don't have to duplicate import URLs. Okay. Okay, now let's include it inside of or actually next to this text field. But first we need React fragment element, because we're gonna have two root elements, which is not allowed in the JSX, like so. And now let's open JSX expression, and inside of this expression we're gonna check is open. So basically, if this dropdown should be open, and we're using this property from the downshift, and we're gonna check if this is open, we're gonna render the paper, or if it's not, then we're just gonna return null, like so. And actually, we're not gonna make this paper as a self-closing tag, okay, because we're gonna render some content in between the lines here. What I usually like to do is to give parentheses here so that we can break lines and make it more readable. Okay, like so. You can even use like Prettier or any other code formatting tool so you don't have these issues. But yeah, I haven't installed any for this tutorial. Okay, this will do it. Okay, how do we get the properties of the menu from the downshift? Is we just use this property get menu props, and we destructure them inside of this paper. So here, open up the curly braces and just destructure this method, like so. Now let's add a couple of material UI properties. So set the square to be equal to true. And we should apply some styles afterwards. But essentially what we need to do inside of this paper is to retrieve the movie's results and to loop through all the results there, display 10 of these items, and display the title and genres for them, and also display the image. So we need to go to our parent component here in the containers in the search movie suggestions, and here using the use selector, we should select all the results that we are getting from the database. So let's destructure this state object and use the search. Again, we're using search to identify the slides in the store here, or actual reducer. And then we're accessing the store using the use selector. So use selector, and then we have here accessing the store, and we're just returning the store. And then we're destructuring that object with this search. And now we should pass this search to this suggestion component. We can name this property as movies and just pass in the search. We then receive those movies through prop inside of our suggestion component here, movies. And now inside of the paper, we want to loop through these movies. So open up the curly braces and let's target the movies, and we access the results property. So we only want to display 10 results, so we use the slice method on the array and we cut from 0 to 10 of index, and we want to filter them by only the titles or the movies that have the searched term inside of the title. So use the filter method on the array. Here we have the axis of item. This item represents every single movie. And here we just check if there is no input value. And this input value comes from the actual here downshift. We check if there is no value, or if item.title, and we're gonna lowercase it for better search, that includes input value to lowercase. Like so. So basically what we're checking is that the input value is included inside of the item title, and both of these are lowercase. Actually here we also need to write two lowercase, like so. Once we get that, we want to map the rest of the results. So here, let's add a map function. Map. And here we access the remainers of the items and the index. And for the menu items, we're gonna use menu item from the material UI. So let's import that one. Here, menu item. And let's import it here. So, like so. Type menu item, the one that we just imported. And here we will place the content of our movies. But let's add some of the properties to this component. To connect the menu item with the downshift, we basically use this getItemProps function to destructure this object and assign those properties to the menu item. So how we do that is here, we just open up the curly braces and just destructure this function, or what this function returns. And apart from that, we want to assign some of the properties ourselves. So the first one is item, and the item will be this movie item, this movie item, this single movie. And so this is the short syntax of this. So we just omit the second portion of it. The second one is the key attribute, which is necessary for every iteration. So item.id. Then we're gonna set the selected, and the selected is gonna be highlighted index. Again, we're accessing this property for the downshift here. And the highlighted index when it's equal to index. So when it's equal to this index of the array. So that's how we determine if this is selected or not. And then depending on that, we can set the style. And we set the font weight to bold if the selected item is equal to index. So it's 500, actually it's like semi-bold or regular. Yeah. And inside of this menu item, we want to display a link. So once you click on the menu item, we want to movie details page to be opened, right? So let's import the link. Import link from React Router DOM. And let's place it here in the menu item. So link. Now let's add a tool property. And the route is going to be /movie/ and then we're gonna access the variable of item.id. So this is going to be the ID of the movie, and here we are accessing the item itself. Okay. And now inside of this link, we want to display a grid with two items. So let me show you on the final version. So if we search for something, so this is going to be like a grid, and this is going to be one item, and this is going to be the second item. So this is like a one container with two items. So let's create that. So let's first import the grid from Material UI here. Let's import a grid like so. And now let's place it inside of the link. One thing though, I notice here that we are assigning index here and we are not comparing. So it needs to be a triple equal so it's comparison, not assignment operation. Okay, let's continue. Add a grid here, and the first grid is going to have the property container, and we will set container to true because this is the container, and this container is going to have two grid items, which is going to be an item. Let's add a spacing property and set the spacing to 8. So this is going to add a little bit of separation in between the edges of this grid container and in between the items as well. And now add another grid as a child grid, and this one will have, as we said, item set to true because this is an item and this is the container. So set this as a true, and we will have two grid items. So copy this over. This one is for image, and the second one is for title and for the genres. And here in the first grid, we want to check if the poster exists. So we can access that using the item.poster_path. So here we are checking if the poster_path exists. So if it exists, we want to render that poster. Otherwise, we want to set the placeholder thumbnail. So let's open the parentheses and let's place an image there, like so. Let's close it and let's put the source here and let's add the alt. Alt attribute is going to hold item.title, and for the source itself we use the item.poster_path. But before this path, we need to add the default images URL, which we can define in our configuration file. So let's open our configuration file, and this config file is here in the source folder. So let's add another constant, export const images_path, and here is the path, https://image.tmdb.org and /t/p. That is the base URL for the images. Okay, and now let's import this one in the suggestions. Import images path from the config file, like so. Now we can use this images path inside of the source here, images. So open another $sign in the curly braces, and let's paste the image path. And what we can do here is we can set the size we want. So for this one, let's set the width to 92 because we want these images to be small. Width 92, like so. So this is the full path. Images path /v2 92 item.poster.path. Okay, so this is in case that poster path exists, but if this property is null or undefined, we want to render something else. So here we want to render image as well, but it's going to have a default poster image. So let's define the URL for image placeholders, and here again in the configuration file, let's export const cover_placeholder, and for the placeholders I'm using this website placeholder.com. Great thing about that is that you can define the sizes that you want in the URL and also the text, so you don't have to use anything else apart from this placeholder. You don't have to set the create graphics yourself. The URL is the following: https://via.placeholder.com, and then / then dimensions of the images 92 times 138, and we want some text. This will be the PNG obviously, and we want text to say no plus cover. So there's no cover. Sweet. Now let's close this configuration file and these movie suggestions, and let's import this one here. So import the cover placeholder, and let's use this one for the image that doesn't have URL of the poster. So src equals to, and it's basically the same here, just call it placeholder. And let's add the alt attribute as well, and let it be item.title. So same as this one. Cool. Okay, now let's say what we have done so far and let's test our application. But we broke our application. Let's inspect what we have here. So if you check the console, let's see what it says. If you return a non-DOM element, you must apply getTrueProps function. Okay, so basically we can't set the root element to be a React fragment, and we need to fix that. So instead of the React fragment, let's add just a regular, div. So here as well, set a div. Let's save this and let's try again. So if we refresh, we get our application back, and let's try to search for something. Let's say Titanic, because everybody knows this movie, and you can see we get this proper image on the left side. We now need to display more information on the right. And if we check some of the suggestions, you can see that if the movie doesn't have a thumbnail, we just show this no cover placeholder. That's awesome. Let's continue. Now I want to apply some styles to our drop-down menu. As you can see here, if you search for something, we get this like gold background color, and also like there is no spacing in between the input element and the drop-down. So let's implement that here as well. So first, let's import style from the MUI/system, and we want to style this paper element or component actually. So let's define a new constant here, const paper style, and this is usually the convention that I like to follow: the element name or the component name, and then just add style in front of it. This is equal to styled, not style, styled, and then the component is paper, and next to it let's define an object with styles here. So I want to set the background color to be dark golden prod, like here, and I want to set the top to be -40 so that we remove that space, and set the position to relative so that we can move it to relative, like so. And now let's use this new style component, and let's replace this paper like this, and let's try again. Let's refresh and let's type Titanic, and there you go. Nice. Let's proceed. Let's add a couple of properties for the menu item. So let's define const menu item styled, and let's use the style function again to style the menu item. And here let's define padding top 5 and padding bottom 5 as well. Okay. Let's copy this item on the menu item. Let's find it. It's here. Let's replace both of these. Let's add one more component for the thumbnail. So const image styled is equal to styled, and here we have image, and let's open up the object, and inside of this object let's define the height to be 100%, like so, and let's replace the regular image with this one. So let me find it. It's here. Okay, and now let's add rules to the actual link. So let's add another one, const link styled, and again use the style function. Here we're going to use the link and open up another object. For this one, let's set the display to block, and let's reset the text decoration to none. Okay, let's save it, and let's replace our link styled element. Let's find it. So it's here, link, and there you go. Now let's preview. Let me just refresh the page. Let's type again Titanic. Okay, everything looks like it should. We have some margin around the items. Looks good. So now let's add this text on the right side. For the text itself, we need to import the typography first in order to use it. So let's import the typography here from the MUI/material, and let's use it in this second grid item. So here, open another typography, and let's add a variant. This is going to be H4 tag, and we're gonna place the movie title. So item.title, like so, and let's copy paste this one. And in the second one, we're gonna use the variant caption, and here we're gonna map all the genres that we're getting. But before we do that, let's go for a second and check the actual request and what we are getting from the request. So again, if we search for a movie, let's say Titanic, and if we open this up, we can check in the results. For example, let's open the first movie. We get the genre IDs. So we need actually to fetch all the categories that we have for the movies, and then we should map these IDs with those categories and then display the names instead of these IDs. So let's implement another API call and another API method which will be calling these genres. And if we close this and let's get back to our editor, if you open the lib and api.js file, we can see that we already created this method for fetching the genres. So what we need to do now is we need to create a reducer and a Saga for this API request, which we can call then from our app component. So let's do that. So inside of the Redux folder, let's create a new file and call this one genres.js. Okay, so in order to create a slice, if you remember, we use create slice function here. Let's first define the initial state. So const initial state is equal to this object, and first we get the genres and the initial state is empty array. Then we get is fetching flag, which is false. So again, we will toggle this flag once we make the actual request, and once it's done, we set it to false. This is used for displaying the loaders. Now let's create a slice. So define new slice with const genres slice is equal to create slice, like so, and provide new object. The name of this slice is going to be genre slice. Okay, and the initial state is going to be the object that we just created here. The next property is reducers, and with reducers we are also creating an actions as well. So the first one is going to be get genres, and this one receives the state, and we just want to alter this is fetching flag, nothing else. So let's destructure the object of the state, and let's update the flag to be true. So at this moment we are fetching, so that's why we alter this flag. So let's copy this reducer or this action, and the second one is fetched genres, and here we also receive the state and we receive the action. So this is when we actually get the callback. And what we want to do here is we want to destructure again the state. We want to set is fetching to false because the request is done, and we want to set the genres to be action.payload.genres. So here we are using the payload that is sent from the actual Saga, and we are storing that into our store. And the last reducer is reset state. Set the state, and all we want to do here is we want just to reset the state to be the initial state. So let's just return initial state. Okay, here I forgot the colon, like so. And now at the bottom, let's export the actions and reducer. So export const, let's destructure the get genres, fetched genres, and reset state action. So we have three states, and we extract them from the action property actions, like so. And as a default, we want to export our reducer. So export default genres slice dot reducer. Okay. Now we need to include this reducer here in our store. So let's first import it. On top, import genres reducer from genres. Make sure that you have the same quotes here, and we should include this one inside of the reducer in our store, and let's give the name genres as well here, like so. And now we have created this reducer, but we need to create a Saga that will make an actual API request. So let's create another function generator here. So let's call this a function, and the name of this function is going to be fetch genres. Again, let's use the yield keyword and use the put method to dispatch an action. And the action this time is going to be fetched genres. So let's import that here on the top. Import fetched genres from Redux genres. So what we want to do here is we want to dispatch this action. Let's copy this action here. Not the entire file import, but just the name of the action. And as a payload, we want to make another yield and send a call, API call. And we can access the method from our movie database class, and the name of the method is get genres, the one that we already created, like so. So we created this fetch genres method, and now we need to include this in the watcher Saga. The action that we are going to be looking for is this one, get genres, and then we're going to trigger this one. So here in our slicer or actual Saga, let's import this action. So we're going to watch for this action, and let's add it here. So add another yield property, and we want to take every. So we don't want to take the latest like for the search movies, but we want to take every single request, and the type of action is get genres.type, and we want to call this fetch genres method here. There you go. Now we can go and test this, and we can actually do that inside of the app.js file. And you may wonder why. But we want to fetch genres only once per application because we want to fetch all these categories, and we will use them to map the categories inside of these suggestions, inside of the index file, and inside of the movie details file. So let's fetch it only once here in the app component, and let's store it inside of the store. For that, we will need a use effect hook. So import use effect hook. We will also need an use dispatch hook from React Redux. And we will need the actual method or the action, get genre from Redux /genres. Okay. Now actually inside of the function app, call the use dispatch hook to get the function which we can call dispatch. And now let's use the use effect hook. So call the use effect, and let's provide a function, and let's call a dispatch, and let's just dispatch our get genres like so. And in the dependency array, let's provide a dispatch like so. Now let's open our app to see does this method gets fired off on the beginning. So let's open up the network tab and let's refresh the application. And we actually get the error. So what it says, okay, this resource could not be found. So we might as well probably set the wrong URL. So let's check the api.js file and genre movie, and actually have a list. We need to add a list here. Let's save, let's close this api.js file, and let's refresh again. And as you can see, now it's successful. So we get all the genres and their IDs. So we can use these IDs to map them and display the name of the genre. Awesome. Okay, let's close the console and let's get back to our editor. Okay, now that we are fetching the genres and we are storing them inside of our main store, we can go to the search movies, and next to this search, we can also add these genres and provide them to the suggestion component. So add another const, and let's destructure our object. Let's make sure that spelling is correct. So this one is going to be called genres, and again we're using use selector to access the store, and we're accessing the genres reducer. So again, inside of the store, this is the name of the reducer, genres. Okay, so let's close it and let's make sure it's copied, and now we can provide these genres to our suggestion component. Okay, so let's add a new property, call this one genres, and let's pass in genres like so. Now we can open them here in the suggestions, genres, and now let's access them here in the typography. Here instead of the title, let's create a new method, and this method will be called, or a function, helper function will be called map genres, and we will take item dot and the IDs of the item, so genre underscore IDs, and we will provide all the genres that we just got from the API. So we can basically loop through all the genres here and loop to the genres here and map them. So let's define this method or actual function, and let's add a new file in the library. So add a new file and call this file as a helper.js. So let's create the function, export function, and name of the function is map genres. Okay, and this function takes two arguments. The first one is genre IDs, and the second one is genres. Okay, now open the body of the function. So what we are going to create here is we're going to create a new object. So let's define a new object and call it genres map. So what we're going to do is we're going to iterate over the genres, and we're going to use reduce function for it. Here we first have the result and we have the current, but not the actual current, but here. And what we are doing for this object, we're basically setting the keys to be an ID of the current one, the current item in the array. So set the current the ID, and this ID should be the current name. And we are just gonna return the result here. And we need to set the initial value, which is the empty object. So again, what we're doing here is we're creating a new object. And for every single genre that we have here, we create a key, which is an ID, and we assign a value of name to it. And now we can use that map to iterate over genre IDs and map the names here. So let's type return genre IDs, and let's map all of them. So we access the ID, and using this ID we can access this new object that we created, and we can access the name of the IDs, and we just join them so that we return back basically a string of the genres like so. Beautiful. Now let's import this method here in the suggestions. So in the import section, let's import map genre from lib helper, and we are already using it here. Let's see if it works correctly. So let's open up, and we have an error again. Let's open up the console to see what's the error here. We cannot access genres before initialization. Okay, so this essentially means that we are not selecting the genres properly. So if we go to the search movie suggestions, we can see that we're omitting store from the genres. So we actually need store and then to access the reducer. And this should fix it. So let's save it and return back. Let's clear the console, and as you can see, our app has been fixed. Let's open up the network tab and let's refresh. Now in the network tab, we can see that we get this list API key, and here we get all the genres. And now let's try to search for one of the movies. So let's type, but actually our application gets broken. So let's see what's the issue. If you open up the console, you can see genre map ID join is not a function. Okay, so join, this must be a typo error. So let's open up the helper function, and yeah, we're performing join on the ID itself, and this should be performed on the array, like so. So let's save this and let's reload again. Let's close the console and let's type in Titanic, and there you go. So here we get the genres as well. Now we need to apply some of the styles to the title and this caption on the bottom, but this is getting like we want. So let's get back to our editor here, and let's close all these files, and let's open the suggestion.js file here. Now let's get back to the top and let's add some styles here. So let's create a functional component, or actually style component. This one is going to be for the title styled, and we're gonna pass the title, but actually the element is typography from the material UI, like so. And then we pass the object with properties. So I want to set the color to be black, and let's add some padding on the top. So padding top 10, like so. Now let's add something similar to the genres. So let's call it caption styled, also typography, and set the color to the black. Okay, let's add that to our code. So here, instead of the typography, let's add typography, or rather title styled, and here we want caption styled. Copy paste that. Let's save it and let's preview it. Let's open our application and let's search for what else but Titanic. That's the only movie I can remember at the moment, and we can see the text is black now and the captions, and we have some padding on the top here, so it's a little bit separated. This is exactly the look that I wanted for our drop-down search bar. The next thing which I want to implement is to continue with implementing this index page. So now we want to add this title and finally to fetch for the movies and display them in this popular movies page. So let's do that. So let's close this suggestion, and inside of the Redux, let's close all of these folders, and inside of the Redux we need to create another slice. So add a new file, and name of this file should be movies.js. Again, let's import on top, create slice from redux.js/toolkit. Let's first define initial state. So const initial state is equal to this object, which has results, is an empty array. Then we have has more to false. This is the flag that we're gonna determine if the movies have more movies, or we have loaded all the movies in the database. So this is flag for that. And we're gonna determine that using the total results and the results that we fetched. So we're gonna compare those two. Total results is going to be 0, page 0, total pages 0, and is fetching is false. Let's add a semicolon and let's create this slice. So export const, and name of our slice is movies slice. And we're gonna use create slice function, and here we need to pass first name of our slice. The name is movie slice. Then the initial state is the object that we defined here. And now let's define reducers, and along with reducers we are defining the actions as well. The first reducer is get popular movies. Popular movies. And here we get the state of our store, and the only thing that we want to do is to update is fetching. So this is similar to like we do on the search as well. So in the first search movies we only are updating the fetching, and we are basically triggering from the Saga these fetch search movies. So we're going to do the similar here. So return an object where we are destructuring the state. So we don't want to change anything apart from the is fetching. Is fetching set to true, like so. Okay. The next action is fetched popular movies. So let's call it fetched popular movies. And this one gets triggered once we get a response from the API. So we receive the state. This is the current state of our application, and receive the action. Where is the actual payload or the results back? And what we want to do here is we want to set is fetching to false because that has been completed. We want to destructure our state and update certain fields. Okay. But actually we need to store that inside of the return and create, basically return new object. So place this inside of a new state object, and we want to update results with the action payload that we received. So destructure the state dot results and action dot payload dot results. So what this code of line does is basically we're using the result from state, and we're adding the ones that we got from the response back. So we are not clearing the previous results that are stored, but we are just adding the new ones. Okay. Now let's update the has more flag, and here we're gonna compare if the action dot payload dot page is less than action dot payload dot total pages. So only if the action dot payload dot page is equal or greater than total pages, has more will be false. Otherwise it is going to be true. Okay. The next one is total results, and we get this one from action dot payload dot total underscore results. Okay, the next one is page, so we get that one from action.payload.page. And the last one is total pages from action.payload.total pages. And that's it. Now we updated all the properties that we want in our store object, so initial state object. So the another slice that we want to create, or actually reducer, is reset state. So this is the one that we want to trigger and reset all the state to the initial. So we just return initial state, like so. And now on the bottom we want to export actions and reducer. So run export const, and we here destructure the object that we are getting from the movie slice. So the first one is get popular movies, the second one is fetch popular movies, and the last one is reset state. Like so, from movies, or actually equals from movies slice dot actions. And on the bottom, let's export default movies slice dot reducer. We already know all of this code and what it does. We explained that in the first slice and the first reducer, so I don't have to go in detail about every single line. Okay, now we need to import this inside of our store. Let's save it and open up the store file, and let's import it here. So import movies, or let's call it movies reducer from from movies file here. And let's import this inside of the reducer here in the store. So this one is going to be called movies. And let's just pass the name of the movies reducer. Now let's go and create a method for fetching these results, or actually movies. So inside of the lib and api.js file, let's add another method here. So let's just copy paste this for faster development, because we're going to reuse this entire code. So search for, let's call this get popular movies. This is also going to be async operation, and here we're going to receive the page. And let's set the default page to be 1. If you're not passing anything, the page is going to be 1. Let's update the URL. Here we don't need search. We only need movie, and we need /popular. Then we also send the API key, and instead of the query, we need to send the page. So page is equal to page, like so. So let's open our Redux Saga now. So in the Saga's index.js file, let's import the action that we are going to use in this one. So let's import, the first one is, let's check in our movies. So the first one is get popular movies. So we're going to watch for this action. And once that is triggered, we're going to trigger this one. So we will fetch both of these, or actually we will import both of these actions. So get popular movies from Redux movies, and the second one is fetch popular movies, like so. And now let's watch for them here in the Watcher Saga. So let's just copy this line, and we're gonna watch for get popular movies type, and we're gonna create a new function to fetch the data. So it's going to be called fetch popular movies, like so. Let's create this function. You can set it here. So it's a generator function again. This function receives an action, and inside of this action, we're going to receive the page that we want to load from the API. So again, we're using the yield keyword, and we're triggering an action. The action this time is fetched popular movies. This is the action that we want to fetch when the API call has been finished, and when we return the JSON format. So we want to pass in a payload inside of this action as a result of the call method, and the result of this call method is going to be returned inside of the payload of this fetch popular movies. So the first argument is the actual request, so api.getPopularMovies. So this is the method that we just created in the API file here, and the second one is the action.payload. So this is the actual page that we're sending from the popular movies page, but we haven't created that yet. We will do it in a bit, and that's it. So let's just close. Semicolon. Now we can close this file, and let's try this out. So we need to go to the containers and open up the popular movies container. Okay, so let's import the use effect, because we're gonna dispatch the action for loading these movies. So we need use effect from React. Then we need use dispatch to dispatch the action. And we also need use selector from React Redux, so that we can read from the store. So inside of our functional component, let's read const movies from our store, and we're going to use, actually it's the equal sign from use selector. Let's call this hook, and here we are accessing our store, and we are accessing just store, and we are destructuring the object that we receive from the store. We are accessing the movies, and we will just log these movies. So just console.log movies. At this moment, this is going to be empty, but we need to open up the use effect and fire and dispatch the action which will trigger the API request, and then it will update this movies object. So let's open the use effect hook. Let's add a semicolon. And all I want to do here is I want to dispatch an action. So, but actually we haven't created a dispatch function. So const dispatch, and we get that from use dispatch. Okay, and now we can use the dispatch here, and we can dispatch the action, and let's import this action that we want to use. So the name of the action is get popular movies. And we also need reset state. So reset state from Redux /movies, like so. And now let's dispatch this get popular movies here. And when this gets closed, we want to clean up the state. So basically when you navigate again to this page, we want to clean up everything to the original state. So here we do the cleanup. So just return this function, and let's call here dispatch reset state, like so. And now let's open our browser and let's open the console to see if you are getting the results from the movies. Let's save it. But actually don't forget to add the dependencies array. So this will determine when we want to rerun this use effect hook. So we want to add this dispatch to the dependencies array, like so. So let's save this and let's try. So if we reload our application and let's inspect, and let's see in the console. Okay, so we are getting some object logs. So the first results are empty. And let me see, on the last one, we are getting the actual results. The component has been rendered a couple of times because of the different iterations, but if you check the network tab, let me just refresh. We can see that we are only getting a request for once. And this is the list of the genres that we are doing on the application start. Great. Awesome. Now let's add one more component. So when we're fetching these results, we want to display some loader. So let's add the new component to handle that. Add a new file in the source components folder and name this file as loader.js. So first let's import React from React, and then let's import circular progress from the material UI, like so. The name of this component is going to be loader, and it's just going to be a functional component. So here we're going to render our circular progress component, and we are going to add a couple of styles to it. So let's add a div here, and inside of this div we just want to render our progress, like so. And now let's import styles. So here in the import section, import styled from the MUI/system. Now let's create another wrapper component. So const, let's call it loader wrapper, like so. And it's going to be on a div, pass in HTML element as a div, and let's open another object. And here what I want to add is I want to add a display property plus flex. I want to justify content in center, and let's add some spacing on the top. So margin top, and we can use theme actually to access the spacing system of the theme. So how we do that is we add here a theme and we destructure it, and we just return here an object, like so. And now we can access the theme. So just go theme dot spacing, and we can use spacing 3. And now we can use loader wrapper and replace our div, like so. So let me show you where we are gonna store this loader component. So if we go to our final version, check on the bottom. It happens very fast, but check when I get to the bottom, we get that spinning loader. So if I scroll down, let me just hit the bottom because all of this has been loaded already. I mean, this is ideal if you can't see the loader, but there you go. Sometimes the request gets a little bit slower and we get this loader animation. Okay, awesome. So that's what we created here. So I added some spacing on the top and I wanted this to be in the center of the page like you saw that. So that's exactly what I wanted to create. So let's save this. Let's close this file. And now we can continue to style our popular movies component. So let's remove this log. Okay, and here I want to ask a question actually for us. If the movies.page is equal to 0 and if the movies is fetching, so this means that we are in a fetching mode, and as you saw previously, we want to display a loader. Otherwise we will fetch the movies. So let's import this loader that we just created, but before we import it, we need to export it. So I just remember that we forgot to export it. So export default loader. Let's save this and now we can import this. So here, import loader from components/loader. Okay. And place it here. And if that is not the case, we want to render something else, and that something else is movies. And let's create a new component, which will be like a dummy component, where we can just pass in the movies and the genres and render what we have. So inside of the components, let's create a new file, and let's name this file as movies.js. Here again, import React from React. This is going to be simple functional component, so name this component as movies, and let's just export right away so that we don't forget default movies. Now we will need a couple of things from Material UI in order to style this. So let me just show you on the final version. So here, as you can see, we're going to have this grid, this entire grid, and this is going to be image list component. Then we're going to use image list item to render this individual poster, and we're going to use this caption. For this caption, we're going to use image list item bar component for to styling and for representation easier. So yeah, let's do that. So here in the import section, let's import image list item, and we need image list item bar for the caption on the bottom. Sweet. Now we can place this image list in our component. So here in the return, let's open up the brackets and let's paste this image list. So we want to set a couple of properties to this image list. Number of columns that we want is 5. We want to set the row height to be 365, and we want to set the gap to be 12. And now inside of this image list, we want to access the movies and we want to map them. So iterate over a single movie and map them. So we receive the movies from our parent component, so we get access here. So let's head over to this movies container and let's import this movies component. Let's place it here instead of this React fragments. So place the movies, and here what we want, we can even make it a self-closing component, and here we want to pass the movies. And again, we are selecting movies from our store here. Let's save this. Let's get back. So inside of this image list, let's open up the JavaScript expression. And here we want to access the movies dot results, and we want to map these results. So here we can access a movie from the array, and let's just log something to test this functionality. So we can access property like, for example, movie dot let's say title. We don't need the semicolon here, and let's preview this. Let's save it. Let's open up our browser, and as you can see here we get all these titles of the movies. That's sweet. Now we want to add the image, the description, and we also want to add the links. Once you click on the actual poster, you want to open the movie details page. And also we will want to add infinite loaders so that when we start scrolling, we get new movies popped up on the bottom. Sweet. Let's remove this paragraph and let's import image list item that we imported from the MUI material. And here we want to set the key. So the key should be always unique. So movie.id is something unique that we can perfectly use for the key attribute. Now inside of this image list item, we want to place a link. So let's import the link on top. So import link from React Router DOM, because as you can see here on the final version, these are all the links. And when you click on the link, you get move to the movie details page. So let's add a link inside, like so, and let's add the properties to this link. And here we want to add a path to our link. And if we go back to the app.js file, we can see what is the path that we defined for the movie. So we want to add that path here. And this ID is going to need to be dynamic. So, and we're going to access that from our movie ID, movie.id, like so. Now we want to check inside of it. Let's open up a JavaScript expression again, and we want to check if the movie dot poster underscore path exists. Render image in that case. So let's render an image. Let's close it. And for the source, let's import the images path here. So import images path. Let's place the image path here. So images path. And we want to set the width to be 300. Again, we're setting the width with this parameter. And then we want to use the movie.poster.path, like so. Let me close the side menu so we can see it clearly. Awesome. Now let's add alt attribute as well. So alt, and let's add alt dynamic as well. So let it be movie.title, like so. And on the bottom of the image, what we want to display is that caption with genres. So let's use the image list item bar component that we created and imported actually. So here we want to set the title to be movie.title, and we want to set the subtitle. So set the subtitle, and the subtitles are going to be the genres. So we're gonna store that inside of this span element, and we will need to map the genres. So we will need to import the genres as well. So let's select them here from the store. So let's copy paste this selector and call this genres, and let's access them from the store.genres, like so. And now we can pass them to the movies component here. And now you can see how easy it is to import the movies or any other variable from the store. We can use it here now. So genres, and we need to import the helper function for mapping genre. So import, it's called map genres from lib /helper, And now we can use it here on the bottom in the image list item bar. So let's open inside of this pan, let's open the expression here. Let's go up the map genres, and this takes two arguments. As you can see, first the IDs, the other one is genres. So the first one we access from movie.genre underscore IDs, and the second one we pass all the genres that we just fetched and passed to this component, like so. Let's save this and let's preview in our browser. And let's open the browser. And as you can see, we get our images, we get our captions on the bottom. And yeah, this more looks like the end result that we want to achieve, but there are some issues that we want to handle, but this is a great progress. Awesome, so let's fix these issues with the scroll bar and with this layout overflowing. So I want to add a couple of styles to our image because it's overflowing the boundaries of the boxes. So let's, on the top, import styled from MUI/system. Now let's create new styled component. So let's call this one const image styled, and let's call the image HTML element, and for the styles let's add width to be not more than 100%. Let's add the same for the height, and let's set the object fit to be cover, like so. And now let's use this, replace our image. Let's save this and let's preview. Okay, this looks better. As you can see, the images are now inside the containers, but the problem that we have is that we don't have any separation from this grid and with the rest of the page. And as you can see in the final version, we have this margin. So this should be added in the layout. So let's see what's happening. If we go back and let's open up the layout, you can actually see that the children that we're rendering here is not in the layout wrapper. So let's just move it inside of the layout wrapper, and let's save this and let's see what's happening now. And boom, now we have this separation that we wanted, and this looks much better now. So the last thing that I want to add on this page is actually this title, and to implement the infinite loader. So let's add that. So let's close the layout, and actually let's close the movies because we're going to implement this inside of our container component. So let's import here typography from MUI material, and let's place it here before the movies. So we'll need a React fragment because we're going to have two elements. And let's move the movies inside as well. Let's just format a little bit. And for the typography, we want to say popular movies. Popular movies. And let's add a couple of properties to the typography. So set the component to be H2. Set the variant to be H3. And set the gutter on the bottom. So gutter on the bottom as true. Sweet. Let's check how it looks. Boom, we have this popular movies title now. Great. Now the next thing is we want the movies to, keep loading. So we want infinite scroll, right? Because right now this is only what we get. So let's add that. Let's first import this component here in the import section. So import infinite scroll from react-infinite-scroll-component. So this is the external library that we installed. So let's copy this one, and we're going to wrap here our content with it. So place this component here, and we will need to add a couple of parameters to set it to work as we expected. So here, the first property that we want to add is actual data length. And we access that from the movies.total results, like so. The next one is the next. This is actually an event which gets fired once we reach the bottom of the page. So we need to implement a new function, which will be calling the API request and adding the results. And we do that here. So let's add a new component, or actually a new function. And let's name this function as load more. And it's just a functional component, or actually a function. And here we check if movies has more. So basically, if there is more movies to be fetched, then we dispatch the action. If there is no movies, we are not gonna perform the dispatch. Just dispatch, and let's dispatch the same get popular movies action. The only difference is that we want to increment the page by 1. So every single time that we are fetching new movies, we want to increment the page and get new results, right? And let's add a semicolon here. And now we can use this load more when this next event gets called. We also need to indicate to the infinite scroller for the has more as well. So we can access that from the movies has more property. Next one is we can set the custom loader. So we can use the one that we created previously. Let's import. Actually, we are already importing. So let's just place it here. Loader like so. To avoid having necessary overflows, we can add some additional style to this component. So let's add overflow to hidden like so, and we can set a message once we reach the end of of all movies, and it's almost like impossible. There's like tens of thousands of movies, but let's cover that edge case. So we can say something like, yay, you have seen it all. Something like that. Sweet. Now let's try this. So if we get over to our browser and check here for the scroll bar, if you scroll down, it gets moved up. So it means basically that we keep adding new movies on the bottom. We can check that in the network tab as well. So let's refresh and let's open up the network tab here, and let's watch for the API requests. So when we hit the bottom, you see we got requests for the page 2. The next request should be for the page 3, and so on. You can see page 3, page 4, and movies are keep adding. So we have successfully implemented the infinite scroll. Sweet. I love this. And now the next thing that we want to implement is when we click on any of these movies, we want here to implement this page basically. And also this page can be accessed from the search menu. So if you go and search for Titanic, if we click here, we should get to the same page. Okay, I see one issue here. We get this object by object store, so we can fix that easily. Let's open the suggestion component here inside of the source component and suggestion. So here we are using downshift. So let's open the item to string property and let's pass a new function. So item to string. Let's define this property. So basically it's going to be a function which actually just resets the state to the empty string. That's all we want to do, because we don't want to see that object which is get returning this. So let's try again. Let's search for Titanic and let's click on something else, and there you go. So now it's cleared. Now let's implement this movie details page, and on the movie details page, let me check. So we have this information, detailed information about the movie. We have this nice poster, and then we have this recommended section, which actually we're gonna reuse the movie component. So let's do that. The first thing which I want to create is the API request method inside of our API class. So let's close all of the other files, and we can reuse one of the methods that we already created. So let's copy this one, get popular movies. Copy paste it. Let's update the name of this method. So this one is going to be get movie. As a parameter, we're going to receive the ID of the movie that we want to fetch. So put in ID. Now let's update the URL. We don't need this popular keyword. Here instead we need to pass in the ID of the movie that we want to fetch. We may remove this page because we're only going to get one result And what we want to add here is append to response. So using this command, we can basically append additional information to the response that we are getting. And what we want to append is the recommendation of movies. Recommendations. Make sure to spell it correctly. Recommendations. So this parameter will add recommended movies based on the movie that we searched for. That's great. So we can display that below our movie that we selected. Let's save this. And now we need to create another reducer and a slice file. So inside of the Redux, create a new file and call this file as movie.js. First, let's import create slice from Redux.js Toolkit. And let's set up first, as always, initial state. So this is going to be a new object. Let's add the recommendations, new object, and inside of this object, let's provide results array. So this is going to be an empty array at the beginning as initial state. Then we have has more flag, which is false at the beginning. Then we have total results, which is 0. The next one is page, which is 0. Then we have total pages, which is also 0. We have is fetching to false, like so. And now let's create our slice. So const movie slice, that's the name of our constant, and let's use the create slice method and provide an object here. The first property is the name. So for name, let's set movie slice. For the initial state, we use the object that we created here. And the last one is reducers. With reducers, we provide an actions as well. So the first one, we're gonna call get movie. Okay. The next one, we're gonna call fetch to movie. And the last one is gonna be reset state. On the last one, we just want to return back initial state. So just return initial state. So this one is for resetting the state, how its name says. So here we can provide a state if we need, but yeah, this is how usually I create it. Now in the first get movie, we just want to update this is fetching flag. So let's pass the state, and here return this state and destructure it, and then let's just update the flag is fetching to true. So at this moment when we are firing this action, we want the loader to keep loading and to set the fetching to true. Then we fire off this fetch movie action and we return back the state. This is the current state, and this is the action, or actually the payload that we are getting back from the API response. So now we want to update our state and in our store. So let's return new object. Here we destructure the state, and let's destructure the action.payload. So we are destructuring as well what we are getting back from the API. And then the next one is we want to update the recommendation object. Inside of this object, I want to destructure action.payload.recommendations. And so this one is going to be exactly the same as from the payload, but I want to update the results array. So here I want to slice only the first 10 items. Action.payload.recommendations.results, and we will do a slice 0, 10. So only the first 10 items. And then at the bottom, we want to set is fetching to false because the API request has been done. So just to show you this recommendation, what it does and why we only choose the 10 recommendations. So if we go to our movies, we can see here on the bottom that we are only to fetch and display only the 10 recommendation movies for that. So we don't want to show more of it. That's why we slice our results to 10 items. So let's save this. And on the bottom, let's export. Let's export our actions and reducer. So call export const, and the name of our actions is get movie, then fetch movie, and reset state. And we are destructuring that from movie slice.actions, like so. Now let's export our reducer. So export default and movies slice.reducer. Okay. And now we need to connect this to our store. So let's save this file and let's head over to redux-store.js and let's import this slice. So import movie, or actually reducer, movie reducer from movie here. And let's create a new reducer in our store. So call it movie, and we're gonna use movie reducer here. Sweet. The next thing you already know is we need to implement our Saga. So open up the saga.index.js file and let's close all the other files. So here, first let's import the action that we're gonna use in this Saga. So let's import get movie from redux/movie. And the second action is reset state, or actually fetch the movie. Yes, that's the one that we need. So here on the bottom, we want our Saga to watch for another action. So this is the action that we just imported. So here we will watch for get movie action, and we're gonna fire off another function. So name of this function is gonna be fetch movie. So let's create that function here. This is going to be generated function as well. So function and add a star, and name of this function we define here. This function is going to return action. This is going to be an ID of the movie that we want to fetch. And inside of this function, we want to use the yield keyword to fetch, or actually to dispatch an action. So the action that we want to dispatch is this one, fetch movie. Okay. And as a parameter, we want to set to send a payload from the API request that we're going to create. So create a API request with this call method, and we're going to provide an API.getMovie method that we just created. And as a second argument, we want to set the ID of the movie, which we got from the URL. So action.payload here. So just to sum up, we are watching for this get movie action. Once this action has been caught, we are fetching, or actually dispatching, this function. So this function is dispatching fetch movie action, and as a payload, it sends the response that we got back from the API get movie. And for this API request, we are setting the action.payload ID of the movie that we want to be fetched. And then we catch that in the movie reducer, and we store that inside of our store. And then we can read that data from the store itself. Okay, let's save this. And now we can go to the movie details container. And inside of this container, we're gonna fetch, or actually dispatch this action. We're gonna catch the ID of the URL. So for example, if you click on a movie, we can do that on our application as well. So if you click on a movie, like for example this one, we get in the URL the ID of the movie. So we need to get that ID and send that to our dispatch action. So let's do that. So first, let's import useEffect hook. Inside of this hook, we're gonna dispatch this action. Then we need use dispatch so that we are able to dispatch an action. Then we need use params so that we are able to read the ID from the URL. And let's import the action that we're gonna dispatch. So get movie from redux/movie, and the second action that we need is reset state. This one. Okay. And now inside the movie details component, let's call the use dispatch hook. Use dispatch. And as a result, we get the function. So let's store this function and give it a name of dispatch, like so. Next, we want to call use params hook, and the result we return an object. So we want to destructure that object, and we want to take an ID from that object. So the name of the property that we define in this destructured object we get from the here app.js file. We define our routes here. So the name of the parameter is ID. So that's why we are looking for the ID property here. And now let's call the useEffect hook. So useEffect, which takes a callback function here. And inside of this function, we're going to call the dispatch, and we're going to dispatch this getMovie action. As a parameter, we need to send this ID here. But the ID that we're getting from the URL is actually string. So we want to check if the ID is existent. So then we want to convert that to the integers. So parse int and provide an ID. And let's provide a Redux of 10. If we don't have an ID, then what we want to do is just provide 0, like so. And when this component gets destroyed, we want to reset our state. So let's return the callback function. And inside of this function, we just want to dispatch this reset state. So just call the dispatch reset state, like so. And in the dependencies array, let's provide a dispatch, like so. So let's test. Let's save this and let's test it. So let's open the browser and let's click on one of the movies, or actually let's search for the Titanic. And let's click on this one. So we got the movie URL, and let me open up the network tab. Let me refresh this page. Let's see what we get. So here we get this API requests, and if we check the title of this movie, let me just find it. Okay, here's the title, it's Titanic. Okay, so we are getting exactly the same version of the movie that we want, so this is working correctly. So original title is Titanic. Yeah, perfect. So now we want to use this data and create our page. So we want something to look like this. Awesome. Let's proceed. Only before we create this movie component, we want to add additional useEffect hook. So this useEffect hook fires only once when we load the page. But for example, if we check this page, we are on the same page like this movie's details page, and if we click on another movie, we want to fire off another API request for additional data. So this API request should be fired when the ID of the movie changes. So let's add additional useEffect hook to handle this edge case. So here underneath of this useEffect, let's add additional useEffect hook, and this hook again is taking the callback function here, and here we have the array of the dependencies, and we're going to provide whenever ID changes or movie.id, we want to fire off this useEffect hook. And inside of this hook, we're going to check if the ID of the URL is not equal to movie.id, and we want to convert that to string. So only if the URL ID is different from the movie ID, we want to fire off the dispatch. And we want to make sure that this is available, movie ID. Otherwise, we may get an error in the console. Okay, so if that's the case, we want to, again, to dispatch this exactly the same action. So dispatch the getMovie action with ID. And now when we have this data available, we can create new component here inside of the components where we will pass all this data and we'll just render the new UI. So let's create a new component here and name this component as movie.js. Okay, let's import React from React. The name of this component is going to be movie. So again, it's functional component, and let's just export default default movie on the bottom here. In order to make this component, we need a couple of components from the material UI. So let's import grid from MUI/material, and we will also need typography. So typography as well here. So let's add a return statement here. And inside of this return statement, we're going to create this grid. So grid. And this grid is going to have two child grid elements. So let me show you. So basically, this is going to be the entire container here. And we're going to have two child elements. The first one is going to be this description. And the second one is going to be the poster here. So two child elements. So let's create them. So let's initialize this grid as a container. So we need to set the container property to true. Then let's add some spacing for the items inside of it. So we do that using the spacing property, and we add the spacing of 2. And now let's create its child grid elements. So grid. This one is for poster, and it's gonna be item equals to true. So here we are initializing this grid item as an item, and this is the container. And we want to set the width of it to take actually 3 columns. And we want to duplicate this one. And for the second one, we want it to take the 9 columns. So this one is going to take the majority of the space. Okay. Inside of the first grid, we want to create a poster. So let's open up the expression. And here we're going to check if the movie.poster_path exists. We want to render an image, and if it doesn't, we want to render that no cover placeholder image. So, but we need to get access to the movie from our parent container component. So we get past that as a property here. So let's go and select the movie from our store. So we do that in the movie.details, in movie-details.js file. So let's import the use selector, which we'll need to select the state. Import use selector from the Redux, and actually we can store this one next to the use dispatch. Import here. Let's remove this one, and let's import the loader. From components /loader. As I want to display the loader while we are fetching the APR and getting the information for the movie. Okay, so now let's select the movie here. So to get the movie, we need to use selector hook. And here we get access to the store, and we want to return the store itself. And then we destructure that object, so create a new constant. And we want to get movie from the store. This is the name of our reducer that we created. Again, here, if you go back to the Redux and to the store, this is the name of the reducer that we're accessing. So let me close this. We got the movie, and also we will need genres as well to fetch, so that we can map them inside of our details component. So let me copy paste this one, and the second one is going to be genres, and we access them from store.genres. Okay. And we want to pass these two properties to our movie component. So let's first import the movie component. It's a default import. So movie component from components /movie. And then we want to render it here in the return statement. Here, let's remove this string. So I want to check if the movie is fetching. We want to return the loader. So loader. Otherwise, return the movie component, and let's pass these two objects as properties. So let's create movie as a movie and genres, and pass both of these objects like so. And now we can access them in the movie component. So let's save this and open the movie component, and here next to the movie, let's add genres as well. And now we can check if the movie poster path exists. We want to render an image. So image Otherwise, we also want to render an image, but this image is going to be placeholder image. So for the first one, let me just break this down so it's more readable. For the first one, we want to provide a source, and for the source, we want to import the image path here. So let's import image.js path from the configuration file that we created here, and the second is we want to cover placeholder as well, in case we don't have an image for our movie. Now let's place it here. Let's use the string interpolation to exit the variables, and we're going to set the image path, and then we're going to set the width to be 300. Again, we're using this property to set the width of the images that we're returning back. And then we want to pass this movie poster path to end of the source. Next, we want to add the alt attribute as well. Make sure that it's included inside of this element. So let's break down the source as well so it's more readable. Let's add an alt, and for alt, what we can use is movie title. So movie.title, like so. Now let's copy this element and paste it here. And instead of this path, we're just gonna use cover placeholder. So cover placeholder, like so. Nice. And now let's preview this in the browser. So this is the final version, but let's open our application, and there you go. We're actually on the Titanic page, but we can select any other movie. So let's select this Megan. As you can see, we get this image, right? So let's try the placeholder. So again, what else? Let's type Titanic, like there is no other movie. And we can select this one with no cover. And there you go. We get this no cover image as well. Perfect. Next, I want to apply some styles to this container grid and to these images. So let's import the style on the top here. So import styled from the MUI/system here. Now let's create a new style component. So let's call this grid style, and it's equal to styled. And the component that we're gonna create is a grid component, and that function creates a new component, and then we provide an object that we want to inject as a properties. I know this syntax is a little bit distracting, but this is how it works. And if you want to access the theme, you would do that like this. So basically you get the callback function, and then you just execute this, and now you have the access to the theme here inside of this function. And I want to add some margin on the bottom, so set the margin bottom here and use the theme spacing for it. So theme.spacing and provide 3, and just make sure that you destructure this theme object like so. Now let's create another style component, and let's call this one image style. And again, let's use the style function, and here we want to style the image HTML tag, and let's provide an object with the style properties that we want to inject inside of this component. So the only thing that I want to set is the width to 100%. That's all. Now let's replace the component that we created. So replace this container component here, and let's copy paste the image style and replace our images, and let's preview what we got. So as you can see now, we have this image full width, and we added some margin on the bottom, but you cannot see that at the moment. But once we add that recommendation section, you're going to see the separation here on the bottom. Now let's add this right section here with the details of the movie. So let's add a movie title here. So we're going to use the typography component that we imported, typography, and we're going to set this component to be h1, set the variant to be h3, and set the gutter bottom like so to be true. And we want to say movie.title. Okay, let's save this. Let's preview. That's sweet. Now we want to add this additional information. Okay, let's create that. So for these other sections, let's create them underneath of the typography here, and let's open an expression. Why? Because we want to check if this property exists. If it doesn't exist, we don't want to show it. So we're going to check for the first one if the movie.tagline exists. If it exists, then we want to render this component. So open up the React fragment, and inside of this fragment, let me show you. So first we're going to have this title, and then we're going to have this description. So actually we are creating this tagline, so it's going to be these two. Okay. So let's add a typography, like so. And we want to add for the first one, text of tagline. And let's add some properties to it. The first one is the component. Set the component to be h3. Then set the variant to be h6. So it's much smaller. And I think that will do it. And then for the second one, let's again add a typography. And for this one, I want to set the variant to be body1, and let's add some margin on the bottom. So let's add gutter button and set that to true. And for the text, we're gonna use the actual movie tagline. So movie.tagline, like so. Let's close this folder preview. Okay, let's save and let's see what we got. Let's refresh our page. Looks like that this movie doesn't have a tagline, so let's search for the original Titanic movie, and here we get this tagline. Nothing on earth could, come between them. So interesting. Okay, awesome. Let's continue. Now let's copy this code and do the same for genres. So let's copy paste, and here we'll check if the movie has the genres. If it does, then we want to iterate over them. So here, movie genres, and we want to map them. So basically call the map method, and here we access the genre. And what we want to take is we want to take genre dot name, and we want to convert this array to string. So use the dot join and just create this separation. So basically that we have like separated them by the commas and the space, like so. Okay, so let me save this. Let's preview. And there you go. So you have this separation, comma, and space in between the genres. Let's proceed. Now let's copy this code again. We're gonna do very similar thing on the next one. So for this one, we're gonna check if the production underscore countries exist, if this property exists. If it does, then what we want to do is we want to iterate again here, and we want to get a country, and we want to get a country name. So similar like we did before. And we want to update the tagline here to country. And actually I forgot to update this one as well to genres. Okay, so let me save this. And if I open up the browser, you can see that we got the country, genres, tagline. Awesome, let's proceed. Again, let's copy this code here, paste it, and for the next one, it's gonna be movie.runtime. So we want to show the duration of the movie. So change the label to duration. And here, instead of this mapping, we want to actually create new formats. So let's add a format runtime function, and we will pass a movie.runtime. So let's create this function here on top of this file. So let's create here const format time. So we receive as an argument a runtime, and we want to format that into a human readable string. Okay, let me show you what we are actually getting. So if we open up our console, and if we inspect the network, let me refresh. And for a movie, we get the runtime in minutes. So as you can see here, in minutes. So we want to format this to show the hours and the minutes separately. So let's do that. So here we will create a constant and name this constant as hours. How we get the hours? We're going to use the math.floor function, and we're going to use the runtime minutes and divide that by 60. And we want to append h, so that's indicating that we are getting hours here. Okay. Also, let's create minutes. So const minutes, and again, let's open up the runtime and use the divider to actually get the remainder of the 60. So here we're gonna convert the minutes to hours, and the remainder of that 60 minutes is gonna be displayed here. So remainder by 60, and then we want to add minutes. Make the quotes consistent, like so, and then we want to return the format here. So return, and let's use string interpolation to access the hours and the minutes, like so. Cool. Let's see what we got. And we got the duration of 3 hours and 14 minutes. I think that's about right for the Titanic. Awesome. So let's add another section. Let's scroll down and let's copy this runtime. And let's paste it here. And the next one, I'm going to use release_date. So if we have release date, let's update the label. And for the label, let's say release date. And here, I want to create a new date. So create new date. And let's pass movie.releaseDate. Then we can format this to look nicer. We can use locale date string, and let's pass English US as the first argument, and the second one we pass an object, and inside of this object we can set the format that we want to display. So as a year, let's display year numeric. Then we set the month to be long, so it basically says the entire month, and set the date as numeric as well, like so. Okay, let's preview this one. And here we got the release date, November 18 of 1997. Cool. And the last section here, let's copy this again and let's paste it. The last section is overview. So let's update. This is like a description of the movie. Overview, and let's update this one as well. Overview, like so. And here we just want to paste that. So movie.overview. Let's save this and let's preview. Perfect. Awesome. Now what we want to add is we want to add recommended section on the bottom, like here. Let's do that. And in order to create this recommended section, we can reuse the component that we already created. So if you go to the index page, we can reuse this movie list component, because all this component does is it receives the list of the genres and movies, and maps them and displays all the movies. So let's do exactly the same here on the movie details page. So let's open up again Titanic and let's code this. So let's add React fragments here, because we're going to have another section. And let's indent this grid style. Now let's open the expression here on the bottom, because we want to check if the movie has recommendations. If it doesn't, then we're not going to render anything. So movie.recommendations, if it has, then render this movie list component. Otherwise, we are not going to render anything. So here, let's create another React fragment. And let's add a title here. So we're going to use typography. Let's set the component to be h2. variant to be h4, and let's add some gutter on the bottom. Gutter on the bottom, let's set to true. Okay. The text of this title is going to be recommended. And now let's import the movies component that we're going to use to render this. So here on the top, import movies from movies, like so. And now let's include it here on the bottom. Render the movies component here, and this component takes two properties. The first one is the actual movies, and we will pass recommendations. So movie.recommendations, and then it requires also the genres as well. So genres, because it needs to map them in the list. So pass in the genres, like so, and we're getting these genres here in our movie component, and we are getting that from the movie details here. Nice. Let's save this and let's preview. And as you can see, we added this recommended section on the bottom of our movie details page. Outstanding. And now the only thing that is left to be done is to optimize this website for mobile applications. But we can do that easily since we are using a Material UI. So let's do that. But let me first show you what is the page and what is the component that you want to fix. So if I open up this movies index page, so let me just move this to the right or the left. And as you can see, if we change this on the mobile phone, we are still getting these movies like in a row. And we want them to be one below each other. So let's fix that very easily. So close all of these files and let's open the movies component here. And we want to import two things from Material UI. The first thing I want to import is useTheme hook from MUI material/styles, like so. Using the useTheme hook, we can access the breakpoints. And the second thing that I want to import is use media query here. Okay, so let's call the useTheme hook. And this hook returns an object, so I want to store that inside of a theme. And now let's create a new constant, match down MD. And I will explain in a second what this means. So call the use media query. And let's pass the theme.breakpoints.down SM. So what this code does is it will match these breakpoints, and every time that it detects that we're on small screen, it will return true or false. And now we can use this flag to add rows based on the resolution or the screen where we are at. So here, let's use the match down MD. And if you're on small screen, let's return one column. If you're not, let's return 5 columns. So basically, when we are on a small screen, we're returning only one column and one item per row. Otherwise, we want to display the 5 of them. So let's save this and let's preview. And as we can see, just with that, we have stacked them one on top of each other here. Let me refresh. Boom. And this now is optimized for mobile devices as well. And let's open up the movie details page. Here, everything looks fine. And here we also have this recommended section as well. Perfect. But the only problem that I see here is that we have no separation in between the items here. So we can fix that easily. So let's just add some styles to our image list item. So let's copy this and create new style component, and let's call it styled. And this one, it's gonna take this, it's gonna create this image list item, and we're gonna inject just one property here. This one is going to be overflow hidden, like so. And now let's replace this image list item here. Let's save this and let's preview. We scroll down, and as you can see, this issue has been resolved. So we now have the space in between the items here. And let me check the index page as well. Yes, this looks perfect. Now the only thing that is left to be done here is to deploy this on the actual internet so that you can share that with your friends or with your future employers. To do that, we need to build the production version of our website. So let me do that. Here, let's add another terminal. Let's open a git bash and let's run the following command: npm run build. This should make additional folder which is like production ready, which you can upload to your hosting. So let's take for a couple of seconds, and the build has been completed. Now we can see that we got this new build folder, and here we have all the files that we need in order to upload it to the server. So let's do that. Now we can close this terminal and let's go to the browser. The service that you can use for this purpose is netlify.com website. So just go to this website and make sure to sign up. I have already done that, so I will just log in to this website. And once you created your account and logged in, you can click here on Add New Site and click on the Deploy Manually. And now you have options to drag and drop your site here, or you can click here to browse to upload. So I will browse to upload, and you just need to find the build folder that we generated inside of our project, Movie Explorer. So upload that and click on the upload. And once the upload has been done, you get the URL where your application or your website has been uploaded. So just click on it and there you go, it's live. You also have some additional settings, like you can change the name of your URL, or you can even add your own domain and hosting. But this will help you to share this website to your friends, like I said, and your possible future employers. So well done. So just to recap what we have created here. So first, we created this searching functionality where you can enter like Titanic or any other movie that you prefer. And then you can click on the movie itself and get more information about the movie. And we also built this popular movies section where we get to browse to all of these movies, and we get these images, nice posters, and the title and the description of the genres that we have. And we also implemented the infinite scroll. So once we hit the bottom, we get the new set of movies. And if we want to get more information and details about the movies itself, we can click on the movie. And here again, we get the description of the movie and we get the image as well. Apart from that, on the bottom, we get the recommendations based on the movie that we selected. That's sweet. And at the very end, we optimize this website for mobile devices. So it's visible and viewed nicely from the mobile devices as well. And that's all. Thank you for watching this entire tutorial and staying up with me until the very end. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the future tutorials. And if you want to get the full source code of this project, make sure to support me on the Patreon. Just type in code with Sloba. Thank you. That's all for this tutorial. See you in the next one.